Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming back to another episode of the Your Gray Matters podcast. My name is Jason, here along with my dad, Neil, your host. How you doing today, Dad?
I am fantastic, fired up.
That's great. Me too, especially because we have such a unique guest on today. When I was a kid growing up in the Hamilton area, there was a new highway that opened, connected sort of the back roads of Dundas with Ancaster and uh, to downtown Hamilton just to get you around very quickly. And that highway was called the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. I always knew it as the Link. And Lincoln Alexander is a topic of this week's podcast. I think you get to know a family member of his.
I do so. I am so excited. A couple of weeks ago, I was introduced to the granddaughter of the late, great Lincoln Alexander. And if you don't know, Lincoln Alexander served in the House of Commons as a member of Parliament. In fact, he was Canada's first Black member of Parliament. He did so many things for our community. He was also very highly placed in provincial politics. I had the pleasure of meeting him. I still remember I was 14. He was
Wow.
bigger than life. A couple of weeks ago, I met his granddaughter, Erika Alexander, a woman with her own power. She's doing community work like her grandfather. She is making a difference already. I asked Erika to come onto the show and tell us about the next great generation of this wonderful family.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. You're all in for a treat. Please remember to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment. It all really helps get the word out, tell a friend. And other than that, we hope you enjoy the episode.
Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned. This is a great one. Hi, everybody. I'm Neil from Your Gray Matters. Welcome back. We hope that you've had a great week. And what an exciting podcast we have today. Erika Alexander. You're going to find out who this remarkable person is. Linda and I had the pleasure of meeting her and her fiance, Quabino, just a couple of weeks ago. And I already feel like I've known them for years. And we've had a great time getting to know each other. Erika, thanks for coming on to
Hi,
Your Gray Matters.
thank you for having me. I'm excited to finally be chatting with you on your podcast.
Thank you. You're so well known and you're so experienced in speaking yourself. I think you should be the host and I should be trying to learn from
One
you.
day.
Hey, everybody, let me tell you about Erika. For those of you who know who the late, great Lincoln Alexander was, and I would humbly say still is in many ways, Erika is his granddaughter, and she is a proud Hamiltonian, as am
Mhm.
I. Being the eldest granddaughter of Lincoln Alexander, she represents a long lineage of her family in this country, and I'm going to want to talk about that. She had a really special bond with Lincoln. I even remember meeting him. I was only 14. I'm 70, and I remember that meeting, and it was incredible. You became a confidant for him, Erika. And today you are really charged with the duty, I think perhaps self-appointed, as representing your family and talking about him. But I'm interested today to learn about you, Erika. You have an incredible professional background in community work, even helping with the police department. You're involved on a volunteer level with the Afro Canadian Caribbean Association. You have been to many of your grandfather's events, which we'll talk about. And you are just generally involved, and you're a great representative of what people can be. You're also expecting your first baby. You
Mhm.
have a wonderful fiance, Quabino, and I just welcome you to our show. We are really humbled to have you. Thanks for coming on.
What a wonderful bio intro. Thank you for that.
Thank you for just allowing me to learn a lot about you. It's really great. And so let's talk a bit before we get to your grandfather. Let's
Mhm.
talk about your family in Hamilton. Because
Okay.
when I met you, I found out you didn't arrive a week and a half ago.
No.
So tell us about your family in Canada.
Okay. Well, of course, I was born in Hamilton, in 1983. So there you have my age. I come from a long line of, on my father's mother's side, we've been in Hamilton for quite a long time, and I'm probably, sixth generation here in Hamilton alone on that side of my family.
Wow.
And then, of course, on my mother's side of the family, they're farmers. And they came to North America in the 1700s from Ireland in England. So they've been here for quite a long time and are still in the farming business
Hmm.
out towards St. Thomas area here in Ontario. And so I had kind of a dual upbringing of watching my grandfather Lincoln go into politics. He became the lieutenant governor when I was just 2 years old in 1985. And then, of course, on the other side, I got to grow up, seeing what it was like to be on a farm and watching my grandfather and my uncle's farm. So that's been both have been a huge influence in my life and have, kind of created the character that I am today. So.
Wow, very exciting. And I know that
Mhm.
your grandfather really was special because not only, of course, did he end up in politics, and he was, I think in 1968, he was elected as the first Black member of parliament in our federal
Mhm.
House of Commons.
Yes.
That was quite a thing, and I'd like to come back to that.
Sure.
But I also learned that your grandfather had a history being in the Canadian Air Force during the
Mhm.
Second World War. I
Mhm.
think he was a radio operator, perhaps.
Yeah,
And
and he got to fly the planes. He never went overseas as he was in Canada for all that time, but it was definitely a special part of his life. It's something that he was very proud of to be a part of the Canadian Air Force.
yes, and in the research I did, I found that that really affected his life deeply.
Hmm.
At the
Hmm.
time, his future life. And
Yeah.
his legacy is kept alive today. There's a law school in his name. For those
Hmm.
of us who live in Hamilton or visit Hamilton, you can drive on his highway parkway, which we've
Yes.
been doing. Um, and there are the Lincoln Alexander Awards. Talk to me about the law school, though, because I know that there's an incredibly proud, it's something that makes your family very proud.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, the law school's been open for about, going on 4 years now, or they're going into their fourth year. And it was something that was brought to our attention, long before the law school opened. And the administration of the law school has always kept us very close, to the workings of the school and how everything's going. And we still have a wonderful relationship with them. But of course, my grandfather was first known as a lawyer in the city of Hamilton. He created or didn't create, but had helped creating the Miller Alexander law firm that we see today here in Hamilton. And of course, it has a wonderful reputation that he was part of from the very beginning. But my grandfather went to Osgoode Hall Law School at York University. And, being a lawyer was really, he's helped so many people. And from that time in his life, there's still people that I meet today who have stories about how he personally helped them, in a difficult time in their life. And I know that's something that he carried into his political career. But when they told us that they wanted to name the law school after him, and it was to be a law school that was a little bit different than the others, it was a little bit more using a little bit more technology than the others, and it was just something that was a little different compared to the law schools we have currently in the GTA area. And we were just really excited. And I've been to the law school. I have a great relationship with the people who run the school, including the dean. And it's a wonderful opportunity just in my grandfather's honor. And I think he would be really, really happy that he has a law school named after him.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And like you said, it continues on today to educate and turn out great young lawyers.
Mhm. Mhm.
How could there be a better tribute than that to your grandfather? Tell me
Right.
about the Lincoln Alexander Awards. How are they done? When are they done?
So that's actually how I started kind of being the family representative. So in my grandfather passed away at the end of 2012. And in 2013, they would have the Lincoln Alexander Awards every January. And of course, it became part of the Lincoln Alexander Day festivities as well. And over time, I've been one of the guest speakers at the awards every year since then. And that was something my grandfather did. So I kind of took over his spot as the guest speaker and being there to honor the recipients of the 3 or 4 awards that they give out every year. And just last year, it actually changed to where all the lieutenant governor awards are now being done on the same day, which was really awesome because you got to, kind of understand what the other awards were about and see the other recipients and people being honored for really good community work that they do, which includes high school students and young adults. So it's really a great privilege for me to be a part of that, and I feel very, included and thought of. And I love to, meet. I've met so many awesome young people because of that experience, and it's something I treasure and I'll take with me as I go into other professional areas of my life.
Yeah, and it is exciting because you said that you were born in 83 or
Yeah.
41, I imagine. My son was actually born the same year, Jason, who everybody
Okay.
sees on this show. But you've done tremendous things at a young age. Not only, I imagine, the name of your grandfather and your family, but in Erika Alexander's name too, because you represent a lot of good things. And I wanted to ask you about your experience with the Hamilton Police Services. You're with CPIC, which I learned is the Canadian Police Information Center. 10
Yes.
years is a long time to be with the police. Tell me what you do, please.
So I'm retired from there now, as I like to say. But I was there for almost 10 years, and I worked in the records department. So I was part of the administrative staff there. I worked downtown at the central station. I really enjoyed it while I was there. It was a great job to have. I worked with amazing people, some of which still are working there and doing good work for our city. But yeah, so I was a CPIC operator towards the end of my career there, and it's a very honorable position. You're privy to a lot of information. You're really, without going into too much detail about what it was that I saw, you have a lot of, what would you call it, responsibility in keeping policing programs up to date as far as information on everything from people who have warrants on them to stolen vehicles to missing persons. So I dealt with doing a lot of adding and editing on that program, and privy to a lot of information. It's a very confidential place to work, and it taught me a lot. It helped me grow up through my 20s and early 30s, and just it's something I value as part of my work experience. And learned a lot of responsibility through that job, and it was a great place to work, and it still is. There's wonderful people that work there, and I do believe that police services have gone through, there's a lot of judgment towards the police at times, and but I felt usually the people I work with are very genuine and sincere people, and I met a lot of good officers that work with the Hamilton Police, so I have a lot of respect for our police service here in Hamilton, and it was a privilege to work with them.
So
And of
really,
course, my grandfather was the honorary chief of police for Hamilton, as well as a few other regions as well. So that was nice.
wow.
Yeah.
I'm just someday we'll have to make a list of what he does and see what he didn't do.
Yeah.
It'll be a much shorter list. So, Erica, yeah, and it is true what you said that the police have a tough job nowadays, and you hear a lot about defund the police and support the police, and we don't have to get into that so much, but I've always been a supporter of the police,
Mhm.
but I don't think I could ever, ever be asked to do what they do. And I think
No.
sometimes we forget in these days.
Mhm.
And sometimes, unfortunately, there are police officers who forget the limits of their duty, and they overstep them too. So of course we have to have a body that oversees this, but
Exactly.
generally I think that they're all heroes personally. That's the way I feel
It's a
about it.
very hard job, and I witnessed a lot of traumas that officers went through, and it's not easy to do. It's not easy physically or mentally, and it takes a great support team, a great family behind you, and all those things count into how well you can do your job as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about Erika Alexander. And what I've learned, of course, is that your grandfather and his grandfather and all of your forefathers, the whole idea of this ridiculous racial discrimination because of the color of one's skin or their beliefs or their religion, or as you know, we're dealing with quite a bit of anti-Semitism right now in the world, and that in itself is shocking. But I wanted to ask you about your own personal experiences with racism in your life. Did you run into it, and how did it affect you?
I definitely did at a younger age. Elementary school is probably the first time I really experienced, being called names and things like that from, young students. And throughout my high school days, there was a little bit of that, especially growing up sometimes. And I played a lot of sports. I played soccer a lot, and at times I was the only, person of color on the team, and I dealt with comments here and there, and the same as in elementary school. But I look at it kind of like, at least in my family history, that I've as the generations go on, it gets a bit easier. I definitely had a very wide range of diverse group of friends growing up. And the schools that I went to were quite diverse. Although, there weren't many Black students at the schools, but there's definitely a diversity of, various different cultures of students. I grew up in Stony Creek, and so I grew up with a lot of, there's a big Indian community, there's Eastern Europeans, there's all different kinds of people that I grew up with, and that's been something that's helped me, throughout my life as far as understanding different, cultures and ethnicities and having respect for different people. But I definitely had my own share of, racism, and I saw that also towards my father and my grandparents as well at times. My dad grew up in Hamilton. He was born in 1949, so he had a very different upbringing than I did, and he definitely experienced racism, which I've written about before. But he kind of, his childhood was him running home from school every day until he had a growth spurt, because he would have kids who wanted to fight him after school every day, and he had to learn to protect himself. And that kind of all stopped when he had a growth spurt, and he shot up a few inches in height, and they stopped bothering him. And he was a pretty tough guy, and he had to be, I think. And I related to that listening to you talk about your life as well. And I think it was just the times where kids at times felt like they really had to protect themselves from other kids, unfortunately. And I know that still happens today, but I think maybe for different, not necessarily racial issues at all the time, but for whatever reasons. But my dad had it hard growing up, but he never allowed that to, he never grew resentment from that. He had friends from all different backgrounds, and especially Eastern Europeans who immigrated to Hamilton at the time when my dad was young, and so those were a lot of his friends, and they actually protected him a lot of the time. And so he had a different perception. He didn't hold on to it. He, of course, my mother is Irish Canadian. She's blonde hair
Yeah.
and blue eyes, so it didn't deter my father from falling in love with someone who wasn't the same ethnicity or race as him, even though he experienced hard. And of course, my grandparents went through many, many things. My grandmother, growing up here in Hamilton, was witness to KKK marches that went through the city at times. She was born in 1916.
Wow.
And so she saw a lot as well. And, but they all thrived through it, and they all persevered in their own ways. And I carry that with me as part of that spirit. And I reflect back on what they've been through, and that helps me in my times of, any stress that I have. I kind of look at it like, well, they went through a lot more than I did, and I can handle this. So
You
yeah.
have a great family history, of course, and of course, a white-skinned, blue-eyed Irish mother
Mhm.
actually gave you a look differently than perhaps other people do who have parents of the same
Mhm.
skin
Mhm.
color. I don't know why I
Yeah.
hate the term itself. But the thing is, so many things in your life gave you a much wider process of thinking.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the best things that I discovered about you when we met a few weeks ago, that for a young person your age, you really have a great way of thinking and also understanding and recognizing. And surely it's from your own intelligence, but also your experiences through your family. Just before
Mhm.
I move on, I see the picture of your grandmother behind you.
Yeah.
Tell me, did you have conversations with her of what it was like to be Lincoln Alexander's bride?
You know what? I didn't. My grandmother passed away when I was 16.
Ah,
And that's one of the things I have a regret, not that I could control that,
right.
but regret that I didn't get to kind of know her as an adult, of me being an adult. She was a quiet woman, and a lot of, what I know about her, what I remember about her is she was a quiet, tough lady. And my grandfather's written a lot about her in his memoir. And she was quiet and confident. And at times, he would have to tell her, you got to say I love you, like she was very to herself and quiet about her thoughts. But she was such a loving and caring person, and I hear so many different wonderful stories about her from my family members. And she just carried herself with a lot of class and dignity. And she was my grandfather's driver before he had a driver. My grandfather never learned how to drive. He never had a license.
Wow.
He has a whole highway named after him.
Oh, my
And
Lord. That is hysterical.
I know. And when my grandfather was in Ottawa at Parliament, my dad was around 19 or 20 years old at the time. So him and my grandmother stayed in Hamilton while my grandfather would go back and forth to Ottawa. And she was the one who would answer the phones. He always kept a public phone number when we used to use phone books back in the day. And their home phone number was public, and anyone could call their house. And my grandmother was the person who answered a lot of those phone calls. So in her own way, she was very much, she helped my grandfather tremendously in his professional career, and also just helping him get to where he was. When my grandfather finished with the Air Force, he chose to move back to Hamilton because he had met my grandmother once and knew that she lived in Hamilton. And so his choice to come back to Hamilton and pursue McMaster's studies was because Yvonne was here and he wanted a chance to be close with her. And they ended up getting married. But she really helped him through university. She worked while he went to school, and she helped pay his way through university as well as into law school. And she really sacrificed a lot of her time and energy to help him get through that part of his life. And he was forever indebted to her that way. And I know that my grandfather always said, his main goal was to never disappoint her. And the one thing that he really loved when he became lieutenant governor is that he created a space for my grandmother where she would walk into a room and people would part like a sea,
Wow.
and make a walkway for her. And he was really proud that he could do that for her and just have her also be honored in a way that she should have been, because she was such a pleasant, quiet woman, and she never complained about anything. And she was just great with home life as well. She was the youngest of four daughters, and she had one son, which was my dad. And she was just a great home caregiver as well, and a wonderful cook. And she was just a very humble woman, beautiful woman, of course, as well.
Wow. Dignified,
Mhm.
important, and she probably greatly helped Lincoln to be Lincoln,
Yeah,
get to
absolutely.
live his dreams. Wow, it's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. It's such an important family.
Thank
And
you.
let's talk about how you want to carry this on. You really are a young person. And,
Mhm.
and by the way, I have to take a second and say, I understand how your grandmother supported your grandfather, but I
Mhm.
have to throw out some props to your partner, your fiance, Quabino, because in our few meetings, I've seen how, not only how dignified and wonderful he is as a person, but he understands his role very well of being supportive of you.
Mhm. No,
And
he's a great motivator in my life, and especially where we're at right now.
yeah,
Definitely motivates me in every way. And on days that I'm tired and I don't feel like doing anything, he's the voice in my head that's, well, not in my head, but right beside me, telling me, come on, let's do it. Just, just a little bit today. So
yeah, you know
yeah,
what?
he's awesome.
Yeah, he's a driving force. There's no
Yeah.
question. Someday we should all be going to his motivational classes. There's
I
no
see it. I
question.
know that's going to
Yeah,
happen.
I see it too, actually.
Hmm.
Erika, let's talk a little bit about leadership today. I mean, your grandfather led people.
Hmm.
Your mom and dad, I'm sure we maybe don't hear as much about them, but there's no question in my mind from talking with you that they're great leaders and they raised great children and they had a great understanding of the community. As so they were important. But what I see coming out of it with you as a young person, early 40s, is you understand leadership. You understand bringing people with you too. Since I was in community work for many years, as I shared with you, one of the things that I became interested in but concerned with is the development of leaders, especially young leaders.
Hmm.
Erika, I have to ask you, are you driven? I don't think that you're driven to be the leader who you are, learning and developing just because of your family heritage. There has to be that spark in you that sees something bigger. How do you feel about leadership itself? And is there a future for young leaders in this country?
I mean, I hope so. I think that I think that there is. For me, I guess leadership it's kind of something that I've always thought about naturally, not necessarily with myself, but just how a leader becomes a leader. And I think a lot of it has to do with personality and a lot of it has to do with your intention. My grandfather never sought out to be the leader of anything, but he was a leader just in his personality and the way he treated other people and the respect that he had for the lives of others. And that's, I still hear about him today. I meet countless hundreds of people throughout my lifetime who have met my grandfather, who have each have a unique individual story about how he affected their life or helped them in a situation that they're going for, or even just saying hello. And that was something that stuck with them. He was one of those people that never turned someone down when they wanted to speak with him. Going down the street or going to somewhere with him, it took a long time because he would stop and talk to every single person that wanted to talk to him.
Yeah.
And I think, we can see that in some of our leaders today. But I think it comes from a place in your heart where you just naturally have a gift of affecting people, and there's something in your character that makes people feel safe with you as a leader. And I mean, that's the type of leader I like and that I would gravitate towards. Of course, we have all types of leaders who might take advantage of their position and the authority that they do end up having as a leader in any type of setting. I know I people have definitely looked to me as far as I'm a great person to giving advice, and I'm a great listener, and I've picked up some of those things from, of course, my family and just naturally how I am as a person. And I think I have some of those same attributes as my grandfather, as my father. My father was very much similar to Lincoln, but in a more smaller way. He was a jack of all trades. He never went into anything political. He was more of, I'd say my father was more of an artist than
Mhm.
anything, but he definitely had a huge impact on our Hamilton community. I meet people all the time that knew my dad growing up, and everyone has such wonderful things to say. He was a really cool, loving person. And even as a teenager, my dad was one of the dads in the neighborhood that all the kids loved. And they all wanted to talk to my dad. And there was kids that I wasn't even friends with who were friends with my dad. So it was kind of just like, I think it's just something that comes naturally based on character. And I think I have a little bit of that in me as well. And it's something I would definitely nourish. And I do believe that there is room for leadership from young folks, and I think we do see young people stepping up to the plate as far as some of the things I've said of what I think a leader is. And you're always going to have great leaders, and you're going to have people who take advantage of leadership. And I think we're at a time where we can definitely decipher between the two. And yeah, I look forward to whatever type of role I can play as far as giving back to our community and servicing the people. That's always something my grandfather was big on, and every job that he took was about service to the people, and that's kind of how I look at things as well.
Yeah, and I can absolutely see that in you. And in fact, and thank you for your comments about leadership, by the way, because we need leadership. And yes, it can stray at times, but I find the leaders I've met, politically, not politically, come into it with a wish to give back and to
Mm-hmm.
improve things around them. And I certainly see that in you. I wanted to say, I believe that leadership really is based on principles, learned principles,
Mm-hmm.
right from wrong, and so many other important things that we learn along our lifetime on this planet. But it's also relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And your grandfather was skilled. Your grandma, sounds like your parents were too. You certainly are. Like I said, we built one in 2 weeks. My Linda is crazy about you guys. But giving back to the community, I'm excited that you talk about that, because there are a lot of people want to give back to the community, and sometimes you don't even know how.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of something that Steve Paikin, I was just watching Steve Paikin when he interviewed you many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw Steve the other night, actually. And he asked you about your grandfather that day that he arrived for the first time in the House of Commons, and what it must have felt like to look around that room and have the only black face in the House
Mm-hmm.
of Commons.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how he felt, but inspiration must have been one of them.
Yeah. No, I agree with that for sure. And my grandfather naturally became a leader in the House of Commons amongst all the party members,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the party. And times are a little different these days, but my grandfather was known to be one of those people that people love to follow.
Yes.
And he took that very seriously. My grandfather is as big as he had a very huge personality, and he was a funny person, and very he could be outspoken at times, in his own way. And he loved to be that person that people felt comfortable coming and talking to. But I think he took his leadership role very personally and very protectively, and never wanted to create a space where he could be taken, where misperceptions could happen, or he was just a very responsible person in that way. And I think for him, the challenge there of being, at the time, the only, Black person there in Parliament, I'm sure there was many challenges for him, but for some reason, he never allowed any kind of discrimination to stop him from where he was going. I mean, he faced tons of discrimination from early childhood all the way, up until probably he was lieutenant governor, and beyond that. But he just never allowed that to stop him. He was very determined to go where he wanted to go. And part of that's the reason why he even became a lawyer, is because he graduated from McMaster with a at the time they called it political economy degree. And he was not allowed to pursue the jobs that he wanted to, here in Hamilton at DeFasco or Stelco. He was kind of told, because of the color of his skin, he wasn't equipped to be a salesperson at the time. And that's what actually motivated him to go do law, because he's like, I'm not, his father, the only job he could do as a Black person during those early times, in the 1900s, was be a porter. There's a lot of history on porters in Canada, and most of them were Black. And my grandfather was not going to be told what he could and couldn't do. And that's the reason why he went to law school and pursued law. And even after he became a lawyer, it was hard in the beginning for him to really, get jobs. And finally, he established his own law firm with Jack Miller at the time. And history happened, and so he just never allowed others to determine what his life was going to be like.
and his strength and drive and understanding of what people can do irrespective of the color of their skin if they just
Mhm.
keep going has motivated and moved our community forward for how many years. And you spoke a few minutes ago about people would part make a path for your grandmother, but and I love that. But what your grandfather did was he lovingly parted people so that
Mhm.
he could move forward and carry people with him by his leadership, on his back, maybe his beliefs. And we're all better for it.
Yeah.
And I think also, and I thank you for staying on this for a little bit longer because
Oh
I
no, I
really
don't even no time for
appreciate this.
this.
Erika, when I look at oh, I wanted to start this by saying in that same video that I watched with you and Steve Paik, and then I flipped to another one with Bob Ray. Bob
Okay.
Ray with the United Nations now, but was the leader of the NDP, et cetera, and is a great Canadian himself.
Mhm.
But I love the way he talked about falling in love with your father, your grandfather. What I mean by that is they could battle like politicians, but behind the
Mhm.
scenes, they'd go out for dinner and figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was that civility in politics that I think isn't alive and well today. Sometimes I think all that started from the day that we started showing Question Period on TV, which is now turned into professional wrestling and unfortunately not much else.
It's quite the reality show.
Yeah, and there's no reality in it at all, except what it
Mhm.
does is, and that's why I brought up leadership and our
Mhm.
communities. I think it tends to push people away. And there's a civility that existed then that I hope can come back because at the end of the day, we may be on different teams, but aren't we all Canadians trying to get
Mhm.
somewhere?
Mhm. And the purpose is to serve Canada as best as as they can, as we can. And I definitely recognize that the political space of my grandfather is quite different today in Parliament. And I would hope that that can come back as well. And the main goal is to serve Canadians and to make life the best here as possible. And there it has become at times it seems to, I don't know if volatile is too strong a word, but at times it's a bit, it is a bit much, and it's kind of going away from taking care of people in this country. And I do see a lot of positives, with a lot of I've had the privilege to meet a lot of different members of parliament, whether at the provincial or federal level, and even in the Senate. And there's a lot of really, really good people that are really working hard to make life better, to make good decisions for all of us, on our behalf. And I hope that continues, and I hope the space that we're going to into the next year's election will bring about more of those types of people.
Yes.
I hope to be one of them, and
I wanted to let the cat out of the bag, ladies and gentlemen. And Erika, I have to say, you're planning your next step to enter into federal politics,
mhm,
and thank you and congratulations as a young person.
thank you.
Thank you for bringing, I believe, what you've been taught and your own personal wisdom into this. But Erika, welcome to the world of politics. And ladies and gentlemen, this is kind of an announcement. Erika, I have to say this with you. It's a lot to carry because of the nonsense that we seem to see in politics. But I love what you just said. I believe in every party, there's people who want
Mhm,
greatness for the country. We may not agree with how we do it and the procedures,
mhm,
but I believe that the people that we think are duking it out in Question Period behind the scenes, some of my political contacts have told me, well, that may be happening, but tomorrow we're going to a prayer meeting all together. Tomorrow we're working on different protocols and different directions
mhm,
for the country. If you take it at face value from what you see, I think most people unfortunately don't pay attention, and they should be. But
mhm,
it comes back to that leadership development of bringing in young leaders like yourself. So I'm excited that you're considering this career, and I know that you're working towards that, which is
Mhm.
amazing because you're expecting a beautiful little one too. So not only
Yes.
will you be helping to carry the country, but you'll be carrying your baby. And the thing is, Erika, I congratulate you for that. But tell me, why? Why do you want to get into the political game, and what do you hope to bring?
Mhm. So, it's something I have thought about for many years. I've been approached many times to consider, at various different levels or areas of government and pursuing that. But really, it came about quite organically in the last 6 to 8 months or so, just meeting the right people. And I did have a chance to visit Pierre Poilievre's home as I was invited a few months ago with Quibino, and I had the awesome privilege to meet this person who, for many people, maybe seem like some kind of celebrity or whatever perceptions people have based on what we see on television. But Polyev really inspired me to get involved with the Conservative Party, and of course, there's the family history there of my grandfather working with the Conservatives at in the 60s and 70s, which may have been quite a different party at the time. But I've been really inspired by many of the MPPs and MPs that I've met along the way in these past few months that have really encouraged me to, go this route and have a lot of support. And just, Polyev was a very relatable and personable person to talk to. And that's where a lot of my inspiration came to run specifically, to try and run with the Conservatives right now. And going into, representing our wonderful city. I've a long time Hamiltonian, as you introduced me, and I love our city. And any way that I can, get in there and help and, change the face and bring back some, good things for the city is what I would love to do. And that inspiration has come from many of the people that I've met along the way. And those people have been awesome. And I reflect on the work that they do, and I see like, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to help people and be the voice of one of the voices of our great community here. And if I have the privilege to do that, that's what I would love to do. And
Well,
it's just been a kind of a waterfall of inspiration over the past many months, and that's where that's come from.
well, I congratulate you and I thank you because, like I said, I hope that there's a lot of Erika Alexanders, a lot of young people who will consider it. Could be
Hmm.
with the PC party, could be any of our
Yep.
parties, our country's historical parties. But the
Hmm.
idea of young people coming forward to get elected is important because with young minds comes new and young ideas, and bless your heart for doing it, and thank you because it's quite a commitment, and I know
It
that it
is.
is, and it certainly is for Quabino and your family. But
Hmm.
to anybody considering going into politics, please consider it and think
Yeah.
about it, and don't be put off by some of the odd things that we might be seeing right now.
Mhm.
There, we have a great country, and I always say our country is worth fighting for because
Yeah.
we have a great, great country. Erika, yes, it sounds like you
I
want to say
thought
something.
I was just gonna say for young people, my age, or I know people even younger than myself that have pursue different parties and things like that. And I think it's just about, being yourself and going into it with integrity and the right intention. And regardless of, the outcome, I think that that's what shines through and people will remember that. And I think that there's great opportunity there in politics and around politics to get involved in many different ways, even if it's not going through, an election process. But I think it just really matters about your intention and what you want to do for the community. And that's just always remember it's about the service to the people. And that's what I keep in mind when I'm
Absolutely.
going through this journey.
And you know what? I want to say something about a comment that someone said to me recently. Not about you at all, but of course they're in politics. They make lots of money and they get great pensions. I want to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. It's not true. People that have Erica's skills and background and the skills and backgrounds of a lot of the people go into politics. Erica's a writer, she's a speaker, she has a phenomenal imagination. She'd be successful in whatever she does. And a lot of the young people I've seen heading into politics have all of those attributes. But let me
Mhm.
tell you something, because of that, they could make a lot more money in private industry, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
could make a lot more money when they retire from the pension plans. So let's understand that you may not agree with specific political positions or parties, but the people heading into politics like Erika have made a conscious decision to do this for their own personal reasons. But I rather doubt their earnings and their pensions are what motivate people. That's my opinion, doesn't have to be anybody else's, but I think we should pour a little more respect into the idea that we as Canadians should get involved in the political system too. As a volunteer, you don't have to run for a
No.
position, but this is a party that we're all invited to, and the decisions, when I say party, I mean like a festival. It's something for us to get involved in, because you're talking about the direction of our country, our place in the world, on our planet, and it directly affects, think about this, what your grandfather did for you so long ago. Now it affects you so deeply. You have a baby on the way, and ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, that is the story of why you must get involved,
Mhm.
because you can't escape this planet yet, except
And
in a
we,
very unhappy way.
yeah, we do have a future to protect, and one of the ways is whatever you're good at. I think that's what you put out into the world, and there's lots of ways we can help our community, and this is just one of those ways. And
Is
I'm at the place in my life where I feel confident to pursue that. So
Yeah, and you're going to do very well,
yeah,
whether
thank
you're elected or
you.
not. Personally, I hope you are. But the truth of the matter is, you do bring so many things to Canada already, and here's a chance for more. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the theme of Your Gray Matters is that the human mind cannot be defeated. We'll always find a way. And leadership is a big part of what we look at, how we have a future based on our young leaders and the experiences of our older leaders and our previous leaders. Erika Alexander, you're a breath of fresh air. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on. I appreciate you. I wanted to ask you, if people want to reach out to you for any reason, how
Mhm.
best for them to reach out to you?
So currently, I guess as in the process that I am in the nomination process for Hamilton West, Ancaster, and Dundas, I have made quite myself quite available online. So you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. It's just Erika Alexander. You can reach me there. I'm on Instagram as well, which you can contact. I also have email, which is erikaalexander.hwad@gmail.com. And I'm also, I'm quite accessible. My email, I respond to emails quite quickly. So you can find me, yeah, you can definitely find me online, and I'll definitely reach out, and I like to make myself as available as possible. And yeah, I'd say that's the
Right.
gist of it.
That's awesome. Well, God strength, Godspeed to you. And ladies and gentlemen, there is another Erika Alexander online. She's an actress.
There is.
I always put in Erika Alexander, comma, Hamilton, Ontario to find you. Erika, thanks again. We appreciate you. What I like about you is that you're straightforward, you're honest, you're honorable, and you have a twinkle in your eye, which is a good sense of humor to me. You have that too. Blessings to you and your family. Good luck with giving birth. And ladies and gentlemen,
Oh, thank you so much.
you're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week on Your Gray Matters podcast. Bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Thanks very much for watching today. We appreciate it. Please subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us grow and it makes us stronger, and we appreciate you doing it.